I was sitting quietly in my living room when my son Daniel walked in. He reached over to the wooden side table, picked up my reading glasses, and casually tossed them onto the coffee table. They skittered across the polished surface and landed face down on the rug. "I'm tired of tripping over your stuff, Dad," he said, his voice dripping with casual disrespect. "Especially in a house that's basically mine now anyway." From the kitchen doorway, his wife Jessica let out a bright, easy laugh, like he had just delivered a brilliant punchline. I didn't yell. I didn't argue or demand an apology. I just leaned forward, slowly picked up my glasses, and carefully checked the lenses for scratches. I simply placed them back on the table. I said absolutely nothing. The heavy, suffocating silence in the room was entirely my own. That same evening, after they had finally left, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. Because 3 months earlier, I had discovered something that completely changed our family forever. My own son had forged my signature on a massive bank loan. He had stolen my identity to fund his own reckless lifestyle. And in his arrogance, he had made one tiny, careless mistake that would ultimately cost him everything. It was a small detail, but it was fatal. To understand why I didn't throw him out of my house that day, you need to know the secret I had been carrying for 3 long months. For 32 years, I taught high school shop class, constantly warning my teenage students to read every single document twice before signing their names. I bought our modest house on Elm Street with my beloved wife Martha back in 1997. Our son Daniel is 35 now, working as a loan officer at a local bank. He knows deeds and titles the way I know engine torque specs. In 2022, I had a minor health scare, fainting briefly in the grocery store produce aisle. Daniel rushed over that night. He sat at our kitchen table and suggested adding his name to the deed as a joint tenant for estate planning. Trusting my own son completely, I signed the paperwork at his kitchen table 2 weeks later, believing I was protecting my family's future from sudden medical emergencies. The small changes started slowly. They stopped calling before visiting, just letting themselves in with the spare key. Then, one Thursday morning, a certified letter arrived from the county bank. It was a notice of delinquency on a home equity line of credit for $52,000. The account was opened 16 months earlier, and it was already 3 payments behind. I read the letter twice, my coffee growing cold. I had never signed for a loan like this. I drove straight to the county recorder's office and pulled the file. There it was, the HELOC application, bearing my signature. But as I stared at the document under the fluorescent lights, I noticed something entirely wrong with the ink on the page. The signature clearly read Arthur J. Whitmore. But I do not have a middle name. I have absolutely never had a middle initial. In all my 64 years of life, I have never once signed my name with the letter J. It was a careless, arrogant mistake. Furthermore, the document was dated for a Tuesday in November. I knew exactly where I was that day because it was the day of my sister's funeral, 2 hours away. Over 100 relatives and friends could vouch for my exact whereabouts at the exact time my son supposedly forged my name. The gut punch of betrayal hit me hard, but it was immediately followed by a cold, quiet satisfaction. He had tried to steal my home, but his own carelessness had left a fatal flaw in his plan. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel, realizing that the boy I had raised had become a stranger. I didn't call Daniel that night. 32 years of teaching taught me that the first conversation after you catch someone lying is the one where they lie the best. I needed proof first. I drove to the office of Margaret Chen, a sharp elder law specialist recommended by a trusted friend. I laid the forged HELOC application flat on her desk. She examined the signature under her lamp for a long moment. "This isn't just simple fraud, Arthur," she said. "This is deliberate forgery. And because Daniel used his bank position to fast-track this, it is also severe financial misconduct." I asked what happened to people who did this. She gave me a choice: criminal charges that could put him in prison, or a civil path to void the loan and sever his name from the deed. I told her I wanted my house back, not his freedom. She nodded. Then we build it quiet, she said. No confrontation until we have absolute leverage. Those next 19 weeks were the most agonizing of my life. Daniel and Jessica kept coming over, using the spare key we had given them. I had to sit across from my son at the dinner table, eating the food his wife cooked, smiling while knowing he was actively stealing my livelihood. They rearranged the kitchen pantry without asking, calling it efficiency. At Thanksgiving, Daniel casually mentioned he had a contractor look at the eventual renovation, talking about knocking down walls as if I were already a ghost haunting my own hallway. I laughed along, my stomach twisting into painful knots. The hardest moment came late that night while Martha was washing dishes. She stared out the dark kitchen window, her hands deep in soapy water, and asked a question that broke my heart. "Arthur," she whispered, "when did we become guests in our own home?" I dried my hands on a towel, looked at her tired face, and told her she was overreacting. I want you to remember that I said that to my own wife's face, because it matters deeply later in this story. The bank's internal fraud department moved at a glacial pace. They pushed back hard, arguing the loan was valid because Daniel held partial title. For 10 long, agonizing days, Margaret genuinely did not know which way the final ruling would go. We just had to wait, hold our breath, and pray for a miracle to save our home. The Sunday everything fell apart started like any other. Pot roast on the stove. Football on the TV. And my reading glasses sitting on the side table, right where I always leave them. Let us go back to that specific Sunday afternoon. The football game was playing softly on the television. Daniel walked into the living room, picked up my reading glasses from the wooden side table, and casually tossed them onto the coffee table. "I am tired of tripping over your stuff, Dad," he said, his voice dripping with casual disrespect. "Especially in a house that is basically mine now anyway." From the kitchen doorway, his wife Jessica let out a bright, easy laugh, like he had just delivered a brilliant punchline. I did not yell. I did not argue. I just leaned forward, slowly picked up my glasses, and carefully checked the lenses for scratches. I placed them back on the table and said absolutely nothing. That same evening, after they had finally left, I picked up the phone and called Margaret. "Move at full speed," I told her. 3 weeks later, the forensic document examiner's final report came back. It confirmed exactly what we both already suspected. The signature on the HELIC application was a confirmed forgery. It did not match any verified sample of my handwriting. The middle initial, J, was a dead giveaway, a fatal flaw in his arrogant plan. Faced with this undeniable evidence, the bank voided my liability on the loan entirely. Furthermore, because Daniel worked in the industry, his own employer was formally notified of the financial misconduct as part of standard reporting. We told him together, Martha and I, at that same kitchen table where he had once talked me into signing the deed. I laid it all out flat. The forged signature, the wrong middle initial, the examiner's report, and the fact that his own employer now had a formal fraud notice sitting in his compliance file. He tried to explain. He said a rental property investment had collapsed, that he owed money to Jessica's brother, and that he had panicked. He claimed he meant to pay it back before anyone noticed. Then he went completely quiet. The kind of quiet where a grown man suddenly looks like a scared child again. For just a single second, before the excuses started again, I saw something honest cross his face. I saw the boy who used to leave notes on my workbench, asking to borrow tools he already knew how to use. He was not born wanting to steal from me. He just stopped being able to tell me the truth somewhere along the way, and that is a tragedy on both of us. Margaret negotiated a quiet resolution instead of criminal charges. But the consequences were very real, and they were permanent. Margaret negotiated a quiet, civil resolution instead of pursuing criminal forgery charges, exactly as I had requested. The joint tenancy was officially severed by a strict court order, reverting the title solely and completely back to Martha and me. Daniel was required to sign a structured settlement agreement, personally assuming the entire $52,000 balance. He must repay that debt directly to the bank over the next 4 years. To ensure he never misses a payment, his own accountant must now file quarterly proof of payment directly to Margaret's office. He kept his job, but he immediately lost his senior loan officer title. He was officially demoted with a significant pay cut that, quite frankly, perfectly fits the 4 years of heavy payments ahead of him. About 2 full months after the final legal papers finally closed, Daniel and Jessica moved out of our spare rooms and into a modest rental apartment across town. He calls me now. Not nearly as often as he used to, but certainly much more honestly than before. He has not asked for his spare key back, and I have not offered him one. The heavy, suffocating tension that had filled our hallways for over a year was finally gone, replaced by a quiet, peaceful distance that we both desperately needed to heal. The Thursday evening after the papers were signed, my old friend Ted came by. He brought a cold 6-pack of root beer since neither of us drinks much alcohol anymore. We sat together quietly on the back porch while Martha made fresh popcorn inside. The neighbor's dog was barking loudly at the fence, just like it always does. "You doing all right, Arthur?" Ted asked me quietly. I thought about it honestly for a long moment. "Tired in a way sleep doesn't fix," I told him. "But it's my house again. Every single wall of it." He didn't say anything clever back. He just nodded, and we sat there listening to the evening sounds. Then Martha came out with the popcorn bowl and sat down right between us. Somewhere in the middle of a story Ted was telling about his grandson, I watched my wife laugh at something. She really, truly laughed. It was the kind of bright, genuine laugh that had completely gone missing from our kitchen for the better part of a year. My reading glasses are still sitting safely on that wooden side table by the couch, lens up, right exactly where I leave them every single evening. Nobody has thrown them since that day. If something exactly like this ever happened in your own family, I wonder very honestly what you would have done. If something exactly like this ever happened in your own family, I wonder very honestly what you would have done. Would you have called a lawyer that very same night, just like I did? Or would you have given your own son the chance to explain himself first, hoping it was all just a terrible misunderstanding? I still ask myself that question on some quiet evenings, sitting on my back porch, watching the sun go down slowly. And to tell you the absolute truth, I do not always land on the exact same answer twice. The heart always wants to forgive, but the mind knows better, and that is the hardest lesson to learn. Here is what I have truly learned through all of this painful experience. Money itself does not corrupt people. Desperation does. When the walls close in, good people sometimes make terrible, irreversible choices. And sometimes, the people we love the most in this world are the very ones we are most afraid to tell the truth to. We hide our failures from them because we cannot bear to see the disappointment in their eyes. That is a heavy burden, and that is on both of us, some. So please, protect what you have built over your lifetime. Do not do it because you are greedy or selfish. Do it because you deeply owe it to the younger version of yourself who worked so incredibly hard, day after day, to create it. Your home, your savings, your peace of mind, these are not just financial assets. They are the physical proof of your life's labor. And if someone ever treats your unconditional love like a simple ATM, remember this crucial lesson. Staying quiet in the face of their betrayal is not a sign of weakness. It is a strategic choice. Sometimes, silence is the loudest, most powerful form of justice you can ever deliver. My name is Arthur. And my reading glasses are still just right where I left them. If this story resonated with your heart today, please subscribe to Heirloom Tales for more stories of quiet justice. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have confronted him immediately, or waited for solid proof? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one of your thoughtful replies. Stay safe, protect your peace, and I will see you in the next story, my friends.